But my beats, they are hard.
All right. Hey, good evening. Welcome to another live episode of the BCSN SportsWrap. I see you getting your drink there, Drew, getting my drink there. Good to be on with you another Sunday night. How you doing, my man?
Good to be back after having to take last Sunday off, my brother. Just great to be back here on the show, man. And boy, we got a juicy one today.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. Lot going on.
Ain't nothing going on in college athletics, man.
It never sleeps. Never sleeps. Never sleeps. I'm telling you, man. There's plenty of content there for us all. There you go. Had to put that up there. Pacers in 6, baby. Got that 1-0 lead. Let's go. Game day today, Drew. So Drew and I will be off the air at 8 o'clock. Regardless if we're in the middle of a topic or whatever, we're cutting the show at 8 o'clock. We will not miss the tip-off tonight, or at least I won't miss the tip-off tonight. I like that. But yeah, appreciate Charles Edmond for jumping in and joining us, joining me last week. That was big. Appreciate Charles for stepping in. Let me make sure I hit the retweets here. I want to encourage everybody, wherever and however you're watching us, say hello to folks watching us on our YouTube channel, via the Black College Sports Network or JBN, my JBN Online, or our SportsWrap YouTube page. Could also be watching us on Facebook, Black College Sports Network, Facebook, X. Say hello to everybody watching on Twitter. Unfortunately, Instagram Live is having issues, so I can't say hello to anybody watching the Instagram Live, unfortunately. Yeah, so it is what it is. But please, as we go through the show, hit the thumbs up and the like button. We certainly appreciate it. All right, I almost got the tweet out here, Drew. So, of course, good stuff. What's going on with you lately?
Oh man, nothing much, man.
How's summertime? It's summer season for you guys, but never a dull moment.
And what does that mean? The only thing summer means is I'm allowed to work a little remotely a little bit more often than during the season, but I still have to hit that office, man.
What kind of things are you in the process of closing out the 24-25 year, preparing for? Give people a little behind the scenes on what you do. The short elevator pitch? I'm sure there's a lot to it, but if you could surmise it in one or two things, what are the one or two, three biggest things that you're trying to get done in the first month of summer? Because obviously you have June and then you have July. So let's just say in June, what's the big objective for you in the month of June?
Well, even before you get to some of the things we have to do, obviously everybody has their conference symposium or conference meetings in the month of June. So the number one thing is make sure you attend that and see what's going to happen in the conference for the upcoming year, be it a change in schedule format, be it changes in tournament formats, new rules, new policies, new procedures, and the biggest thing with those new things that are going to be mandated by the conference, what will be the budget impact on those things? Because sometimes those things are mandated by the conference, and those were things that were not considered when you turned in your budget. And all of us turn in our budgets at different points in times in the season. So if anything that comes up that's going to have a budget impact, how that's going to affect what you have to do. That's number one. Then as far as work on the ground, just closing out things from the season. We just got our academic report completed for Morehouse. We had, as a matter of fact, let me pull up the numbers. I'm kind of proud of this one, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you guys do overall? Good.
Oh yeah, we had good. Our overall grade point average as a department was 3.131 as a department.
3.13. Okay, so what does that rank you?
I mean, I haven't seen where we rank as far as in the conference goes, but anytime your entire department is ranked over a 3, that's something to be proud of. And out of the 279 student athletes that we have at Morehouse, 68 of them had a 3.2 or higher GPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And keep in mind, Brian, we count when we did this, we counted athletes only one time because there are some athletes who play 2 sports at the level. And if you run track, technically you're playing 3 sports if you do cross country, indoor, and outdoor. So that's really 3 sports. So having to, doing the math and making sure that we don't double and triple count some of those student athletes when looking at those numbers, and including we had 2 students who had 4.0 for the entire year. That's both fall and spring semester.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. And they don't do cupcake majors at Morehouse, to my knowledge. Right?
No, yeah. Morehouse is academic school. So when you have 3 point, look, Brian, even our football team had over a 3.
All right. Well, hey, kudos to the student athletes, the men of Morehouse, for turning in, getting it done in the classroom. But
yes.
That's to be expected. So.
But yeah, doing those closeouts right now, I'm working on a year in review recap of everything that happened in the 24-25 season. So okay. I'm compiling everything with all of our sports and trying to put it in one article to kind of summarize the year, try to get the highlights of the year, making sure that you pull out the all conference players, the conference championships, and things like that when it comes to each of those individual sports. Then after that, it's starting to plan for things for next year. Some things, website upgrades, social media upgrades, different things like that. And then getting ahead of the curve, coordinating with your fall coaches on when you're going to send out the information for your fall athletes to fill out so that they can do the information that you need for your bio and the other stuff that you need so that you can do your job, posters, talking with sponsors and trying to get money to support the Maroon Tiger Sports Network. So there's always stuff going on, even though we have no student athletes on campus right now.
So by the time you So how far into the 25, 26 year do you hope to be? Do you hope to be into what, the end of, or by the end of, have all the fall sports taken care of by the time, what, maybe mid-July? Is that guesstimation?
No, well, first thing, everybody has media day coming up at some point in time in July for football.
Right.
So just kind of planning on what type of information that you're going to gather to present at media day, so that after the 4th of July holiday, you can go ahead and put that information together in a usable form for the members of the media. So that will be my next biggest project once I get all the little cleanup done from the 24-25 season. Then after that, you start making sure that you get the information in for the rosters for all your fall sports. So
gotcha.
you try to do that. Well, football you try to get done as early as possible, just because of the pure volume of football with the number of student athletes. Then you take the other fall sports kind of in the order in which they start playing. You know, if you have volleyball on campus, if volleyball opens up before cross country, or if women's soccer opens up before volleyball, whichever one opens first is going to be your next one after football.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And you mentioned the conference meetings. The SIAC did have their conference meetings last weekend. Is there anything from those meetings that you can share that are worth that are news nuggets that are worth sharing, that maybe people need to be like, oh, expecting that is going to be interesting?
Absolutely nothing that I can share.
Come on. All right. So you see that, folks. He's probably talking to somebody now that's probably telling him, do not share any info on X, Y, and Z. So we will have to get our sources. We will have to get our information on the SIC from alternative sources.
No, sir. Bryan, I love being on this podcast. I love being with Black College Sports Network, but I also love my once a month.
All right. We'll get information from other sources. It's all good.
And Bryan, let me throw this out there also. And as you know, I am the new media coordinator for the MEAC SWAC Challenge, Band of the Year, and the Celebration Bowl. So mixing that into what I do for Morehouse also. So I have plenty of stuff to do during the summer.
All right. Emmett, everybody should be working on updating their website and web pages. Unofficially.
Don't expect nothing with rosters until a day before the game.
Okay, let me not. Okay, that's a sore subject. That's a sore subject. I don't know why.
You know these coaches like to hold everything close to the vest.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous. Holding everything to the vest. I mean, come on now. Because here's who you impact. Hold on. Let me say something. The coaches who are holding that.
Let me throw this in. The other reason, besides coaches want to hold it close to the vest,
ridiculous.
Until they are cleared all the way, that's academically, NCAA, and everything else, you cannot put them on the roster. So,
should he be practicing? Should he be practicing?
That's also true. They should not
be.
But so that's another reason why in the fall rosters are slow coming out, because you may have a transfer and you still may be waiting on a transcript. Same thing with your high school kids or JUCO kids. So rosters are slow in the fall intentionally.
That's fine, but every kid that's out there practicing should have his name on the website, and there should be a photo. If he's practicing, because if you're telling me he's practicing, that means he's eligible.
Yes.
His name ought to be on that website and his face. Because who's wondering about that photo and that picture? His mama and daddy. His mama and daddy deserve to be able to go to the web, and her, because there are universities that have female athletes. They ought to be able to go to if you sent your child off to school, right? And she or he is a part of the team, his face, her face, or name should be on the school website, athletic team roster. My opinion.
100% agree with you.
Okay, good. I'm glad you agree.
Be up.
What'd you say?
I just can't tell you when it's going to be up, but it will be up.
Again, if he's practicing, if she's practicing, I better see it. There's no excuse for not having it there. I'm sorry. I respect all of y'all SIDs to the hilt, but
I 100% agree with you, Bryan.
That
is a goal, to make sure that every student athlete has a photo and a bio on the websites that I maintain.
Right. Anyway, I'm curious. You guys, the follow-up Emmett's question. Emmett brought up a great thing about athletic departments that have good websites. Who are the departments that you guys, as you guys bump around, who are the athletic department websites that you really like? Like when you go to the website, you can find, good information. How about this? Current information, good imagery. Give me your top 2 or 3. You guys tell me out there in the chat. Who are your top 2 or 3 athletic department websites that you go to? And it could be it could be conference, SWAC, MEAC. It could be by division, NAIA Division II. It could be by conference. What conference website? I just want to hear your guys, you guys who are watching the show, chime in and let us know. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Bryan, and I might get in trouble for saying this, I think all of our conference websites are a little clunky and could use a little bit of refreshing. All 5 of them.
I don't want to get on here and start ranking.
I'm not going to rank.
I would hurt some feelings, boy.
I'm not going to rank them, but I think
start ranking.
I think they are. I think our conference websites can be a little clunky and a little.
There are a couple that I think are good. I think there are a couple who are bad. I'm just going to leave it at that, and you can figure it out.
Yeah. And with some of them, it's by the sport. It's maybe not the whole website, but when you go to one particular sport, it's clunky.
Right. All right, let's get into some of the news. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we're going to bring on a good friend of the program, the host of of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. The dean himself is making a Sunday appearance on the show, and we're going to talk about the NCAA's House settlement, which was approved late Friday night. Obviously, the court.
That was not a news dump.
No, well, it's partly not a news dump because the judge and where all this took place is in California. So when it was 6:00 California time, it was 9:00 Eastern when it was finally approved. So we'll get into talking about all of the various aspects. So we're just at about 24 hours or 48 hours.
48 hours.
Yeah, we're just at about 48 hours since that news broke. And, I think a lot of people we've kind of knew this was coming. It's now official. So I think it'll be a chance to kind of talk to Doc and kind of see what we can expect. We've heard some things, and we'll kind of go from there as we go. But let's get into some of the news stuff that happened over the week or over the weekend. And Drew, let's start with the Black College Football Hall of Fame Class of 2025 enshrinees, which, folks, if you didn't know, it happened last night. Saturday night was the induction ceremony. I was very surprised at the lack of social media coverage, but it is what it is. I don't think you could see it live anywhere. I don't think it was streaming anywhere, which, I don't know, this day and age feels disappointing. But it is what it is right now. But I and I think there's only been maybe a handful of schools that have followed up with information regarding a particular athlete. But let's get into the ceremonies. And we got some great video here, courtesy of our good friend Keisha Kelly, Black College Experience. The Black College Football Hall of Fame was in downtown Atlanta at the College Football Hall of Fame, and it was the 16th annual induction ceremony. So this is the 16th class. You can see the host was none other than NFL Network broadcaster and Howard University alum Steve Weish. The event drew over 30 previous inductees, as well as a host of other VIPs and other folks from around the country to celebrate. Doug Williams, who's the Black College Football Hall of Fame co-founder and 2011 inductee, is quoted in this article I'm reading from HBCU Sports as saying, "What we have from the class of 25 is an incredible showcase of the talent that has come from historically Black colleges and universities over the years. When the Black College Hall of Fame was established, its purpose was to do just this, elevating and recognizing the past, present, and future of Black college football. Congratulations to the class of 2025. There were 6 new members that were enshrined. You had Henry Dyer of Grambling State University. He was Grambling's first 1,000-yard rusher. He was an all-team. He was a first-team all-SWAC selection from 1963 to 1965. Led the nation in scoring with 110 points. He was drafted in the 4th round of the 1966 NFL Draft by the Rams. Rashawn Mathis of Bethune-Cookman University, a 3-time All-MEAC first-team honoree. Mathis excelled as a defensive back from 1999 to 2002 before a distinguished NFL career. I believe he was with the Jaguars, if I'm not mistaken. A member of the family, one of the greatest wide receivers that Drew and I ever seen work, Jaquay Nunnally of Florida A&M University. Nunnally was a standout wide receiver from 1997 to 2000, known for his record-setting catches and electrifying plays. He was actually, at the time that he graduated, he led all of, Black college football in single-season receptions and might have been somewhere in the top of the NCAA FCS/1AA, surpassing Jerry Rice at the time that he graduated in 2000. You also had Dominic Rogers-Cromartie of Tennessee State University. He was a defensive back from 2004 to 2007. Later became a 2-time NFL Pro Bowler. Had a good run in the NFL as well. Of course, many of you know and saw Jay Skywalker, of course, of Howard University, was a quarterback in the early 90s. I believe he led Howard to a Black College National Championship, I believe, in one of those.
3, I think.
Right, 93. And then Coach Fred Pop Long of Wiley College. His career spanned 4 decades from 1921 to 1965, leaving an impact on Wiley College and Black college football as a whole. Hey, Emmett, I appreciate that. Thank you. But I tell you, they are in good hands with Steve Weish, no doubt. I mean, Steve Weish does a great job. Steve Weish, the great thing about Steve is he's a part of the NFL and a part of the NFL Network. So there's that tie, and he does a great job with his platform in trying to spotlight that. But I would have loved to see more coverage. And I was really surprised, Drew, really surprised at how little coverage there. And I even went to outlets. I mean, not just, Black College Sports Network, I'll be honest, we were absent a little bit in it. But, other entities, I didn't see much live in the moment coverage of the event. So I don't know, Drew. So just in general, what's your take, or what are some of your thoughts on the Black College Football Hall of Fame? 16 years now in the making.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Brian.
Please.
I forgot the doggone thing was happening Saturday.
That's my point. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Because I'm right here, and if I would have put 2 and 2 together, I probably would have applied to cover it. I would apply for credentials to possibly cover it, but and I'll tell you why I forgot, Brian. I never got any information that it was happening on this particular day. You're on mute, Brian.
These kind of things don't just spring up.
No.
We have a group of people who are in Black college sports media. No one in our group even talked about it. Like, hey, this is happening tonight.
Right.
So,
and not only that, because usually amongst our group, if one of us gets a credential link for any of these major events, we are always good at sharing, because we know that Brian may not be on the media list for this event, but I'm on the media list for that event. So we put it in the group so that everybody gets it who wants to apply.
Right. So I don't know. I would really hope that in the future the Black College Football Hall of Fame can lean into some of their resources, connections, and really do more. Yeah.
I'm gonna get in trouble once again. Black College
Good
Football
trouble.
Hall of Fame. You need to involve a little bit more Black college media. Reach out to the Black college media. I mean, mainstream media. Don't get me wrong. Mainstream media is important.
Was the mainstream media even there?
I didn't.
And Atlanta, you have hosts. You have. I mean, we've got a couple. I mean, again, outside of Keisha Kelly, Black College Experience. I know she was there, but I mean, our network's based in Atlanta. HBCU Game Day is based in Atlanta.
Game Day.
Game Day is based in Atlanta a little bit. I mean, there's entities
Keisha be getting in some amazing places. Keisha just on a different level.
Well, I mean, look, she's there, but I mean, again, maybe somehow we might need to put her in the chat group. We would have known. I'm just saying. Also, the ceremony also spotlighted two outstanding modern stars. Jada Byers of Virginia State University received the 2024 Black College Football Player of the Year award, earning the prestigious Deacon Jones Trophy for his remarkable season. And then Kobe Durant, formerly of South Carolina State and of the Los Angeles Rams, was voted the 2024 Black College Football Pro Player of the Year, an honor that is presented by the NFLPA. And then you had Jackson State football team was honored as the HBCU Team of the Year, and head coach T.C. Taylor recognized as the Coach of the Year. Quite prestigious. So, yeah. Good stuff. So, what did Steve say? Who was there? Mr. Campbell or Coach Cole was there? Oh. Coach Cole was there. Okay.
Which one? Johnny or LC?
Probably the one who works on his show. Probably the one who works with his
brothers.
Yeah. Well, you look, again, I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think it'd have been nice to have known more about it. But all right, let's get ready to take our first break, Drew. Everybody
need to go get their yellow pad and their pens, because we about to have a special study session on a Sunday, Brian.
Yeah. So we're going to break down the various elements of the NCAA's House settlement that was approved Friday.
That's both brothers.
We're going to go through that with the dean himself, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, who's going to join us. We say hello to everybody, all of you joining us on the chat. What up to you? Hello. Thank you for coming in, joining us. Again, question on the floor from the first segment was, what athletic department has or what athletic program has the best athletic website right now? And you can do this in a couple of ways. You can tell us by conference. You can give us a 1, 2, 3. You can give us the best conference, and there's 5 HBCU conferences, so you can rank them 1, 2, 3, or you could go just in general. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. So maybe as we see those come in, Drew, we'll make sure to kind of star those, and then we'll go through. Lennon already starting and trolling you, Drew, already. So good stuff. All right, let's go ahead and take that first break. You got it, Drew, or you want me to get it?
Go for it, Bryan.
All right, I got it. All right, let's go ahead and take our first break of the day. Go ahead and knock that off for me. We'll come back to that, Chuck. Chuck with dropping some nuggets there in the chat. Appreciate you, Chuck Hunt. Always good. And, all of it won't even appear on the screen. That's how much good stuff is in. Make sure you're following us. I think Chuck follows on Facebook. So if you're one of the Facebook folks, that's where you can get that Facebook. My BCSN1. That's the Black College Sports Network Facebook page. And so let's go to our first break. We'll be back after these words right here on the Black College Sports Network.
There's a shot to right.
Might be.
It could be. Right field. Grand slam. What a shot. That's how you get hot, young fella.
Thank you, guys, for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do, and all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
This is Brian Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN SportsWrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN SportsWrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Football fans, HBCU football is back in the ATL with the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge Kickoff. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC, Southern, Eagles, Jaguars, the Marching Sound Machine, the Human Jukebox. The kickoff trophy is up for grabs, and bragging rights are on the line. The rivalry is real. Bring the family and join us pre-game for the fun-filled Coca-Cola fan experience, including band jamborees, food, activations, and fellowship. For tickets and information, visit MEACSWACChallenge.com.
Ready, Doc.
All right, let's go.
I got my legal pad. I got my pen. You know, I need to make sure I take notes in this study session.
Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, joining us right now is the dean himself, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the host of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, which you can hear Doc specifically on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, but also the namesake of the Wednesday Indy Report as well. Doc, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my son. You see, he's allowed me to use his studio. You see the Bethune-Cookman hat there. He has a little SWAC banner, and then obviously the Black Panthers effect. But he does have Jackie Robinson back there, so I'm proud of. Deuce, as he decided to enter into the market, he got a little shut down a little bit by YouTube, as you need to be an adult, 18-year-old, to be on the show, him and Miles McGinty, as they do their thing. But they have some big interviews coming up. It looks like Coach Hernandez, commissioner, Dr. Charles McCullough, have told them they can't wait to get on the show to interview him as they had a chance to watch him do his thing. So excited about him lending his office media space to me tonight while mine is under construction.
I applaud Deuce for not falsifying his age for YouTube. You know, like there are really checks for that kind of thing. I applaud Deuce for being honest about that. You know what I'm saying?
Hey Doc, when he does that, we are going to replay that on Black Collar Sports Network, correct?
Certainly, I let him know. I only help him in terms of negotiating this deal. His mom got a lot of it, so exactly. I'll let him know. I'm sure he'll be excited about it, but you know, he's a business person now, I guess.
I hear you. Okay, so as let's see, just after 9:00 Eastern time on Friday, California judge Claudia Wilkin, the judge who was presiding over the NCAA settlement, granted approval to the NCAA's landmark settlement of 3 antitrust cases, often referred to as the quote-unquote House settlement, ushering in a new era where schools are permitted to share revenue with athletes within a new enforcement structure led by the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC, who we would categorize as the Big 4. Although you have a different name. I've heard you refer to them as the what?
I call them the Super 2, which is the SEC and the Big 10, because they really control what we used to look at as the Power 4. So the next 2 I call the Power 2 now. You have the G6, 7, depending on how you want to look at the Pac-12 as it tries to rebuild itself. But the NCAA calls them the Autonomous 4, Autonomous 5 during the time with Pac-12.
All right. This apparently, I'm just going to read a quote here from Judge Wilkin as part of her, this was part of her 76-page opinion. Unbelievable that you have that. Says, despite some compromises, the settlement agreement nevertheless will result in extraordinary relief for members of the settlement classes. If approved, it would permit levels and types of student athlete compensation that have never been permitted in the history of college sports, while also very generously compensating Division I student athletes who suffered past harms. All right. So a lot to get here into, Doc. So I think there are, let me see. There's a couple of different areas that we could go into here. So let me see. I know there's a, I'm just gonna frame it from the big picture.
No problem. Let me jump in here and let me take it back. I want to do a little history on this. I think it's important because a lot of times we jump right into this discussion and it loses the historical factor. And I think talking to Drew, we'll have a little time. I understand, as you said, we have a hard out. So I'll make sure that we keep all that in mind to do that. But we got a little time. And I think it's important for us, as I said, to do a historical framework of where this comes from and let people know that the work of individuals in the past are the culmination of what took place here. We can look at some winners and losers if you want to do that, which is the American phenomenon when we think of the sporting framework of this country in a lot of ways, that there seems to have to be winners and there has to be losers. So we certainly can get to that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't look at it from the historical connection and going back. We'll do that from the lens of Black people, African Americans, Negroes at the time, obviously. We can look at it in an institutional framework and then the greater perspective. But let's first look at one of the framings that set all this up. And that is the term student athletes. And I brought some books so people understand that I'm not just sitting up here reading a couple of articles and doing what I've done. This is a labor that I've studied for since I pretty much got into the academic side of doing journal articles, book chapters, if you would, in regards to what does it mean to be in athletics. So there's a guy named Walter Byers that ultimately had a book. And this book kind of is his recompense when he framed and came to Jesus, if you would, understanding what he set up in the 1950s. This book is called The Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Walter Byers with Charles Hammer to look at that in terms of what that means. So the term student athlete is ingrained in college athletics vernacular. NCAA organized press conference involves a moderator seeking questions for the student athletes. This comes from the aspeninstitute.org. But what I wanted to get into is student athletes, quote, was a term used to try to offset tendencies for the state agencies or other government departments to consider a grant and aid holder, end quote, to be an employee. Byers said in a court testimony during the 1990s. Soon the term student athletes became embedded in all NCAA rules and interpretations. So why is that important? Well, student athletes, quote, first surfaced when the widow of Ray Dennison, who died from a head injury in 1955 while playing in Colorado for Fort Lewis A&M Aggies, filed for workman's compensation death benefits. The Colorado Supreme Court agreed with the defendants that Dennison's widow was not eligible for benefits because the college was not in the football business, end quote. Now, it would be hard to tell anybody out there that doesn't say modern day college athletes is not a business, but that's where it started and why it took so many folks, lawyers, academics doing research over a period of time to try to figure out what this looked like, and calling one book called The Indentured Servant, right? The inside story of the rebellion against the NCAA. This is by Joe Nacera and Ben Strauss, who talks about the NCAA and how they feel that it's crossed. Obviously, you have some books that look at the history context across the lines when we desegregated ACC and SEC, which looks at profiles of first Black players in the SEC. And one reason I always like to bring that up is I have the privilege that I first learned under a professor at Texas Southern University in the JHJ School of Business, Dr. Claudia Claiborne, who was the first player as a freshman that desegregated Duke University in the ACC. So I learned at the foot of individuals that told me about that experience. So it's not just what I've read. This is actually talking to folks in their experience of being unclassified student athletes and how they were treated. We have great shows by College Brown that have the ADs and coaches on there, and they talk about the NIL and they talked about, oftentimes they have this discussion ongoing that looks at the transfer portal. And I'm trying to make sure people understand it's not just players jumping in this damn transfer portal. It's coaches that are pushing in the transfer portal. We need to stop looking at coaches as gods and make sure that we let coaches understand that they work for an institution and their job obviously is to develop young players and do that by winning sports championships and hopefully graduating them, which should be the first thing. And while I have a lot of respect for coaches and work with a lot of them that do great, I'm not under any auspices, if you would, that they're doing these great things. But it goes back to let you know this term athlete was so that an individual that lost his life playing the game, right, would not be compensated for it. Just let that sit on you for a minute. So to me, that's important. By 2020, you started seeing academics where you seen this framework where they no longer would use the term student athletes. You still have some papers out there, but it came pretty universal in the 1990s that it wouldn't do that. So I wanted to take a little further look, as we said, about Walter Byers, executive director, what that looks like. But from a HBCU perspective, what does this mean? HBCUs have been fighting from an institutional perspective to be included in this picture. And funding-wise, while as the MEAC and SWAC have to pay for part of this group of football players and basketball players, and their players will not be compensated going back, and we'll break that down. Who is the benefits of this? Going forward, they have an opportunity, and we can even talk about how institutions such as Jackson State are looking at putting additional money on ticket sales, Texas Southern as well. But if you allow me to go back to a chapter that I wrote that looked like the Black College Athletic Experience, that specifically looks at past, present, and persistence. There's a part in here that I wrote that gives you a framework of what type of fights that were happening during the same time in the 1950s when this took place that we sometimes gloss over. And I'm going to take you back to 1930. Although the SIAC basketball tournament first began in 1933, it's the CIAA basketball tournament that has become one of the third largest in the country. After John B. McClendon Jr. led the North Carolina Central Eagles upset over the heavily favored Virginia Union Panthers, coached by Thomas H. Harrison, in the inaugural CIAA tournament held in Washington, D.C. in 1946. Like Coach McClendon, many of the HBCU coaches of the 1940s and their other established conferences housing HBCU athletic programs, such as Texas Southern University of the Midwestern Athletic Association, coached by Edward H. Adams, Southern University of the SWAC, coached by Robert Henry Lee, Florida A&M University of the SIAC, coached by Edward E. Rock Oglesby. I'm sure y'all familiar with that name. And Fayetteville State University of the EIAC, coached by William A. Gus Gaines, were wondering if they would have the opportunity to play competition outside of the HBCU peers. So a lot of folks talk about HBCUs playing each other. Hell, they've been fighting to play different institutions when they wanted, how they wanted since the 1930s. So I don't really want to get in the discussion as if HBCUs are scared to play anybody. Hell, they fought to break down the lines so many folks can go to work and work with who they want to, but they don't get acknowledged for that. We talk about a couple of individuals who are important, but it was institutions and the leaders of those institutions and coaches that did that work. So I continue, as it says, they were wondering if they would have the opportunity to play competitions outside of the HBCU peers. After the CIAA basketball tournament in 1946, the seeds of discontent continued to grow as several coaches in the CIAA began to discuss the issues of their basketball team participating in the NCAA or NAIA postseason national tournament. This is before Jackie Robinson, the athletic director and basketball coach at the Southwestern Athletic member, Houston-Tillotson College, now Houston-Tillotson and HBCU in Austin, Texas, integrated the Major League Baseball in 1947. And by 1948, based on external pressure played by the NCAA, by the Olympic Basketball Committee, the NAIA Executive Committee voted to rescind the ban of African-American players participating in the tournament. In 1949, McClendon found a family formally structured the National Athletic Steering Committee, NASC, an organization created to end the institutional segregation of sports teams, not just individuals, on a national level. The NASC group was comprised of African-American educators and coaches of HBCUs as they planned the platform and strategy to challenge the segregated laws of the land in the unwritten segregated laws of the NCAA and NAIA. Quickly, in 1951, McClendon continued to move in and joined forces with coaches Eddie Jackson of Howard University, Harry Big Jeff Jefferson of Virginia State College, now Virginia State University, and HBCU in Petersburg, Virginia, I should say, to travel to New York City for the National Convention of Basketball Coaches, NABC. You still heard of that term today. And to meet John Lather, the president of the NABC, to discuss participation of HBCU basketball programs in the NCAA and NAIA tournament. The NAC group expanded with several HBCU coaches as they met in Washington Park, YMCA in Chicago, Illinois, to outline a platform to have HBCU basketball teams participate in the NCAA tournament and or the NAIA tournament. There was no membership at this time. HBCUs could not be members of any of these organizations. Didn't do anything. NASC President Harry Jefferson and Matt Green, athletic director of Central State University of Ohio, as you know, was executive secretary and official spokesperson. In the same year, Central State, Ohio State University applied for and was granted NAIA membership until it was later affirmed that Central State was an HBCU, and such membership was rescinded quickly. Finally, in 1952, an agreement was reached that allowed the top HBCU program teams to participate in the NAIA under sponsorship of the NACS. Unfortunately, prior to the NAIA tournament selection, the NAIA later rescinded the decision to allow an HBCU basketball program to participate in the tournament. The NASC proceeded with a tournament field of 8 HBCU basketball programs in Nashville, Tennessee. The Tennessee State Tigers were victorious over Central State, members and crowned champions of the NASC tournament. From 1952 to 1955, the National Athletic Steering Committee operated this de facto HBCU National Championship basketball event, which featured 8 teams. The last thing I'll say about this was in 1952, the field for historic NAIA District 29, a lot of people know it by, the HBCU National Championship was field of champions and top-ranked teams from conferences housing HBCU athletic programs such as Tennessee State, coached by Clarence B. Cash, Central State University, coached by George Edwin Gibbs, Texas Southern University, coached by Edward H. Adams, all 3 institutions members of the MWAA, Midwestern Athletic Association. This also included Southern University Agriculture Mechanical College, now Southern University, Baton Rouge, and HBCU in Baton Rouge, as you know, coached by Robert Henry Lee of the SWAC, Clark College, coached by Ladonius S. Sonny Epps II. The gym is named after him. And Florida A&M Agriculture College, now Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, and HBCU in Tallahassee, Florida, coached by Edward E. Rock Oglesby. Both of the SIAC, as well as Fayetteville State College, now Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, coached by William Gus Gaines, and the EIAC, West Virginia State College, now West Virginia State University, and HBCU, coached by Mark H. Carwell of CIAA. I say all that to say it's important to understand the history of who fought to put players in the position over this long arch now where they can get paid. And essentially that is what it is to make sure that those that are in the workforce as these power two, if nothing else, the autonomous four that are making all this television money that they do not want to share. They set up a system that they don't share with any of the 31 plus Division I institutions that now are having to put their money back into it, coming out of the basketball money, to make sure these players get paid. So I just wanted to do a little bit of history there, acknowledging these HBCU institutions, these leaders, presidents, coaches, athletic directors that fought and never have been under the gauge that individuals shouldn't have rights and institutions shouldn't be included in the framework of associations, athletic-wise, or this country in general. Setting up where Texas Southern actually plays for the first desegregated championship in 1953. They lost to McNeese State, whose governor was not even going to allow McNeese State to go in the tournament. They snuck out of the night, and obviously it was too late for them to call them back. They played, and on their way to the championship, as history would have it, they actually defeated 3 HBCUs, including Texas Southern, in the championship game in a narrow loss by Coach Adams. Before we hear about Tennessee A&I, now Tennessee State, they ran on 3 straight championships before UCLA had their long run. But those are just some of the things that I wanted to frame this up as we get into the discussion and really talk about the breakdowns of this. I thought that was important because not enough time do we really frame what is going on now and how history really connects to the present.
Can I ask a question, Dr. Cavil?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, thank you for joining us. One of the reasons I asked you to come on here because our platform allows you to take that deeper dive versus what you do on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where it's a lot more rapid fire and read and response type format on Tuesdays and Thursdays on your regular show. So, question number 1, Dr. Cavil. Is the phrase student athlete even applicable anymore with just on the surface with what we see coming out of this House settlement? Let's just start off right there.
No, not really at all. Not in the way that they wanted to coin it, which would mean that they were amateurs and thus could not get paid. So obviously they can still use it. But by definition of this court ruling, you can't use that. And some people say over the last 5 years with the rules that kind of trickled out where the NCAA had loosened parameters, most notably with the legislation that first took off with the NIL ruling, that obviously athletes were able to get compensation. Now, the important thing that's different about that is that they were not able to get compensation from the institution. They could go get name, image, and likeness. Now, we understand that you got the collectives that kind of worked around that, which this legislation we'll talk about will try to make that a past framework and cease and deliver of how they were able to do that. But collectives would come together and they would actually find a way to compensate, is the term I like to talk about, athletes for the work that they were putting in. And so to answer that, no, I don't believe it's correct, but I stopped using student athletes 5 years ago. I use college athletes.
I got you.
Oh,
All
college
right.
athletes. Okay.
Yeah. Question number two, and this comes from Emmett in the chat. Now, of course, we all know what happened with the Ed O'Bannon case in 1995. I believe it was probably a little bit later than that with Ed O'Bannon, but it was in the late 90s. And we do know Ed O'Bannon played a part in it, but what do you say to people like Emmett who think that this whole thing began with Ed O'Bannon?
I'd say that's not quite accurate. I think that's probably the most recognizable case and it's the easiest one to go back to in terms of what has really kicked things in a totally different direction. But to be honest, as I just said, from 1950 at least, many people say before that, 1930, folks have been pushing for athletes to be compensated. We know, but in terms of indirectly what we've read after past cases or friends and colleagues that told us, we've known that college athletes have been compensated for a while. It was just deemed impermissible. I don't want to say illegal because we act like the NCAA is some
the $100 handshake.
Right. But it was impermissible, not illegal. It was impermissible from the organization, NCAA and the NAIA, to provide compensation to college athletes. And so O'Bannon was a big case because it directly affected the NIL side of this, where he literally tells the story that he was with a friend and they were playing the games and he understood that it was his likeness. That's what people forget. They say NIL, but it's name, image, and likeness. Mm-hmm. So you would sign your letter of intent with the NCAA, and embedded in those rules is they forever had your likeness. So there's players that were big name. We can go back to big time Hall of Fame NBA Naismith players that didn't have their likeness from in college. They won national championship. Alcindor, that we call Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, was one of them. He could not sell his image in terms of his UCLA jersey and sign it and get money for that.
How many Jordan jerseys do we see? UNC
from
23.
Yeah, that's right. He couldn't get no money for that. Where does that make sense in a capitalistic society? That's what we forget. Everybody else wants to tell you that, hey, this is pure capitalism and we're supposed to enjoy this. And then they'll get mad at you when we talk about social form activities or certainly social welfare. I actually have a chapter in the book that called it athletic welfare, where you had Black athletes in the football, sports, and basketball that were generating revenues, and they were actually playing the Olympic sports. And in this case, when you talk about these huge universities, when we get into a country that looks at everything in terms of the dichotomy of ethnic makeup, it was these players that happened to be Black African-American that were playing for European and white female players to play their sports scholarship-wise, generate all this money. So you had this transfer of wealth. So for me, the bottom line in this is the fact that you're finally going to get some of this what was transferred of wealth back to college athletes for the work they're doing. That shouldn't be a problem unless you're looking at folks that want to sell you this purity of sports, which it never was. We understand that. I'm not saying that you can't enjoy it, but don't let people lie in your face and tell you that this is all about grooming these young folks that as if they have no ability to talk about their own identity. Shout out to the Black student athletes that was done in Chicago in terms of what that looks like, including Dr. Leonard Moore, who is the director or the executive director of that group. And he has many athletes that he brings in together to talk about their identity, because for so long, folks allowed athletes to have their identity only seen through sports. And we've seen how that was not a good thing for a lot of them. So yes, no, I believe certainly it's a good thing that these players have been compensated. I have the opportunity, even if it's just $1.
Go ahead, Bryan.
All right, let me a lot to chew on there. Let's go through the settlement here, and I'm reading some. I thought some of the first tweets and the first story that I saw came from out of Yahoo Sports, and Ross Dillinger, who covers
great job.
Covers college football and sports for Yahoo. He posted a great thread regarding the House settlement to kind of give that summary. So his initial tweet talks about the settlement negotiated by plaintiffs seeking back NIL pay and NCAA/Power Leagues has three main parts to it. Okay. The first part is the $2.8 billion in back pay.
That's what the B.
With a B.
Okay.
To ex-athletes from, I believe it's a period of like, it's a 10-year period. Okay. From like 2016 forward, I think is how it goes. Then you also had
2016 to 2024.
Right. Okay. The second part is the $20 billion in revenue sharing for future athletes. And then the third component is a new roster rules and enforcement arm. So those are sort of the three main bullet points. Which one do you guys want to start with first? Which element of those three do you want to start with first?
Let's start with the $2.8 billion.
All right.
So
the $2.8 billion in back pay spread over 10 years from the NCAA and school distribution, i.e. the NCAA tournament money, right? It's a distribution determined using a formula based on a player's value. And the $2.3 billion of that goes to Power 4 football and men's basketball players, which is an average of $120,000 a player over 10 years. So if you were a player from now, what's funny about that is conferences have changed. I don't know. It might be somebody who let's just say you're a Washington State football player or basketball player, right? You are not in a current P4, but back when you played, you were part of the P5.
That's correct. So you got to pay. You got to pay.
I don't know. Are they in or out? So okay, so that's the framework of the $2.8 billion. Where do you want to go from that? Because I think there is an effect for HBCUs and smaller Division I programs that have to be a part of that payment.
That's correct. So the first thing is while they're part of that payment, none of the athletes from 2016 to 2024 that are outside of that Power 5, as they were called, Autonomous 5 at the time, are eligible for that money. They can get stuff moving forward. But those groups, which is paid from folks from 2016 to 2024 that were unable to earn money from their NIL, to your point, I want to put a finer note on this. The NCAA is responsible for 40% of this.
Okay.
40% of the amount will come out of the NCAA's treasure in terms of what they've saved over whatever period of time. Then the 60% will come from the revenue distribution to conferences. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and I'm not sure if people really understood it at the time, where we were saying that each member institution, for example, in the SWAC, would have to come up with $300,000 over a 10-year period, which would be their $3 million essentially associated of what they had to pay back to the NCAA distributed from this payment, you know. So that's part of that 60%. That is all 31 Division I conferences that are paying back into that. So that's another way where I said still those in power position still were able to create a framework where their past players got the benefit of it, but they didn't have to pay out all the money. They shared the expenses with everybody, which is why one of the things I laugh when you hear these commentators talking about they want to take their ball and go on their own in terms of the SEC and the Big Ten. They don't want to do that because that means all the expenses that comes with going on your own, they have to pay for. Right now, they get the benefit of 70, 80, 90%, depending on which revenue you're looking at, football, basketball, and other money. They get to get the larger percentage of that, but they get to spread the expenses around the 31 conferences. You can't get a better deal than that. You get the ability to be the big boy, and that's why they always pushing for just more control of the rules is what they want. And they just use the scare tactics that they're going to go take their ball and run. But that is not the case. But that's what this is about, this first $2.8 billion and how it came together. They did some calculations over that 10-year period and talked about how they were distributed at that time. And so that's how they came up with the formula to say that the value of what took place from 2016 to 2024 is $2.8 billion. It's probably more than that, but that's what you do in a negotiation. The other folks are going to try to knock it down some. And finally, when you get to a point where everybody says, all right, we can handle this, we have a way, we'll agree to pay that. And as you mentioned, as we open things up, it was the judge that had to affirm that based on what the plaintiffs and the defendant were going back and forth on arguing in court, among the other line items that we're going to talk about as well.
You know what's going to be interesting about that, fellas? Especially post-portal, because the payments are only due to P4, P5 players at that point in time, is number one, with players starting at maybe a G5 school or even Division II school and maybe spending 1 year at a P4, P5 school. And then number two, when this all started, you know, there was a Power 5. So, you know, how was that going to be factored? And number three,
well,
I'm really let me throw my last one out.
Let me get that part because you're gonna skip and then you're gonna add something. I can't answer that part.
Okay.
So you talked about how does that come out with the Power 5 part of that? Well, everybody in this court case that were part of it, they included what was the Pac-12 member institution. So everybody that was part of those conferences at the time when all this took place were responsible for that money. You asked an excellent question in terms of how they get paid. They will get paid how many years they participated at the Power 5 level at the institution. 2 years, and it's broken down to that. So that's how they would calculate.
Yeah, and then, like I said, I'm glad I'm not the accountant in the room, because with these 5th and even 6 years that some of these student athletes have been granted, you know, some of these young men and young women may be getting a big A check versus some people who may be getting 65 cents basically, you know, when it's all said and done. So it's just gonna be interesting to see the disparity of the payments just based on some of those simple factors that's just out there, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be many other factors that's going to go into how much student athlete is going to receive out of. But those are just 3 things off the top of my head that are really going to be interesting and really going to make the accountants in there have to do a lot of work.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. And you know, as you probably have read from any of these huge cases where corporations are sued and there's basically a class action lawsuit. The lawyers are going to get a large percentage of this. Let's not fool ourselves. Or at least their corporation, their company, the law firm they work for, and then they'll get some part of that. But after that, it's going to be a challenge to get your hands on this money. It's going to be a lot of paperwork that you're going to have to fill out. So a lot of folks are going to get frustrated about the paperwork itself. So many folks will not get paid because they just won't follow through. And then you have the unfortunate circumstances about death, and how will they handle that? Does it go to the family, or does it just go into the ether?
So I'm reading here from the Yahoo Sports article. More than 85,000 athletes have filed claims for back pay, and just 600 have opted out or objected to the agreement, which I find interesting, the fact that you can narrow it down to 600. I mean, and be, you say more than 85,000, but then you come and say only 600, which leads me to believe of those 600, they're itching for another potential lawsuit, possibly, because
some of them might already had their lawsuit in the works, Bryan.
Correct. That's possible. I can't imagine anybody. I'm not going to say nobody. There may be a percentage, but to think that of the 600 people, somebody is there saying, "Oh no, don't pay me. I got my value. I got, I was good. I got an education. They owe me nothing." Now there may be a small percentage.
Right. I'd say it's a small percentage.
So I'm not going to say never. I'm not going to say.
And many of those small percentage of folks that probably still making money through some career path. And so they have this ability to be altruistic and say, no, I don't need that, because they're doing very well. So you have that percentage, but most folks that are struggling, they're certainly going to do it. But you're right. Just like there were lawyers already looking at different lawsuits. So some of those 600 are part of legal standings that are trying to move forward beyond this. So if you're with that group of lawyer and law firm are going to tell you, no, don't sign that, because that means that you won't be able to take advantage of this lawsuit. So they're hedging their bets in terms of what that looks like in terms of declining the offer. Be interesting when they decline it. Does that mean they're declined forever, or is it a way?
Right. Can I come back? Can I come back? Can I rethink about it once I see the distribution checks? Can I come back? It's like,
with class action suits, there's usually a deadline. You have to file before X date.
Correct.
Usually, most of them are 180 days after the ruling for most of the class actions that I've ever seen. It's usually 180 days.
Oh, that still will be the case here. The time period may be changed based on what the judge sets, but that's slightly different for the folks that opted out. And we'll get into some opt out in terms of institutions. That's something that we want to talk about too. We have time to do it.
Let's take a break and then come back in the last segment, and we'll kind of finish on the last 2 points of the House settlement, which was the $20 billion in the revenue sharing model, and then the new roster rules and enforcement arm. So we're going to talk about those 2 aspects when we come back from the break.
And also, there's a couple of questions that I've kind of highlighted, starred off to the side. So if we have time, I would like to
we'll hit the questions
get those at the end.
We may not have time at the end. So if you want to get them in, let's get them in, and then we can get them, because we got a hard out at 8:00. So based on how many questions. How many questions? We'll figure it out as we go. All right, let's take that break and come back. Hit the thumbs up and the like button, and we'll be back in just a moment. You're watching the BCSN SportsWrap right here on the Black College Sports Network.
I'm attorney Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being heard.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Sugar Chateau Desserts is a specialty bakery located in the Charlotte, North Carolina metro area. We will create delicious and one-of-a-kind treats for any occasion. Sugar Chateau is currently shipping cakes in a jar, offering a variety of different flavors in a single-serve container that can help you celebrate in accordance with social distancing. Place your orders today by calling 803-526-7895 or visiting sugarchateaudesserts.com.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Attention football fans. The Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge kickoff is back in Atlanta on August 23rd. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC Southern. Join us at Center Park Stadium for a full day of tailgating, football, and bands. For more information and tickets, visit MEACSWACChallenge.com.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan and A.D. here, joining us, Dr. Kenyatta, Cavil. Okay, Drew, found those questions, hit those questions. We'll give two of them, two of the best ones.
All right, well, I think we've already answered this one, Dr. Cavil, where athletes be considered well, no, we didn't answer this one directly. I asked about student athletes. Is that moniker even valid anymore? Will the athletes be considered employees now? This comes from Blue Jackets for Life.
No, that is not the case. That is an ongoing lawsuit as well. We're probably getting closer to that, but at this point, athletes are not considered employees at this point.
And Dr. Cavil, Blue Jacket is that kid in class. He constantly has his hand up because he has the other questions that I have chosen.
I love it.
Will some athletes in non-revenue sports lose scholarships?
Now that is an important question. It goes back to one of the things that come out of this settlement. We need to understand that what we thought of scholarship limits do not exist. That's the term they use with scholarship limits. Scholarship limits are no longer a thing. What they have is roster limits. So you'll have countable. So there were cases, and one of the things that held this up is that Judge Wilkins had a concern that there were a group of athletes in non-revenue sports, or what other people call Olympic sports, that were not going to have scholarships renewed. And so when we thought we were going to hear about this finishing, a couple of, 30-some days ago, really.
Back in April, actually.
They asked them, they asked April, exactly. They asked the defense, the NCAA, essentially, to go back and look at. So what they decided to do is that they're not guaranteed it, but they said that it's possible that folks outside of the roster limits will have an opportunity to hold on to their scholarships. It will not count against the roster limits. until the eligibility is up. Then moving forward, no.
Right. And we'll get to that a little bit because that's one of the points I know Bryan is going to bring out as he talks about the settlement. I got to sneak this one in, Bryan, because it's a member of the Black College Sports Network, so we always got to get those in. Dr. Cavil, is there any school of thought to leaving the NCAA? And I'm going to ask that question in a little bit of a different form also. Is there a thought of schools leaving Division I because of this? Let me ask it in that way also.
HBCUs or schools in general?
Both.
Yeah, I don't think at this point we've heard any of the HBCU schools, but if we remember, we've heard one school that won in the tournament that actually a couple of days after they won released a statement that they're moving from Division I to Division III.
St. Francis.
St. Francis, yes, thank you, because I didn't want to say the wrong school and panic everybody. But St. Francis was the institution. So yes, we've heard of that. You'll probably hear some more. More what you'll hear immediately is those schools that opt out, and they have some time to make a serious decision to see how are they affected about not opting in, and does that make an ultimate determination by the board and the president? Do they want to go in a different direction? But yes, you'll see institutions moving. We've seen this from what I affectionately call the Colonial Athletic Association. I know they've been rebranded to the CAA, or Coastal Athletic Association. You've seen movement from several institutions moving. A couple of them moved up the FBS to try to jump in a conference, Delaware. And you've seen a lot of them going to the Pioneer League with the just recent announcement of Villanova. So you're going to see conferences moving. The key date that you want to look at now that this is done, there are probably some that are ready to move. And July 1st is the date that we all look for, is the deadline date for conference movement. Whether it's a year from now or 2 years from now, most schools that want to move will make their designation July 1st. So that's the date you're going to look for, particularly those that have been following HBCUs and they want to look to see if any Division II programs are going to move. If they're going to move to be set to join the conference for the following year, starting the fall 2026 athletic year, they would have to make that decision by July 1st to be eligible then. They can make it afterwards, but then that means they won't kickstart into 2027. So if any schools are going to join the MEAC, SWAC, whether those are some of the schools that are currently in our independent ranks or at the Division II ranks, you'll probably hear that by July 1st. We heard some rumblings for moving from the NAIA to the Division II NCAA. If they're going to move that and they want to start participating in that conference of sports, whether it's a transition or not, that announcement again needs to be made by July 1st.
All right, Bryan. We got 2 more points out of this settlement that we need to bring out.
Okay. Again, I'm reading a great summary thread on the House settlement from Ross Dellinger. His second point from the House settlement was the $20 billion plus in revenue sharing to future athletes. That was point number 2. Let's see.
So to put that together, essentially players can now get direct payment from the institution. And so the question is, where is that money coming from? A lot of that money will come from television money they have. Some of it can come from places such as ticket revenue, other ways that they can make up sponsorships and stuff that go into the athletic department. They can now decide to share some of that. The breakdown of that, to your point, as you were mentioning, which starts or was going to start July 1st, 2025. Some schools are pretty much prepared and had everything going. They were just waiting on the settlement. So see that they've already lined up and they've broken down in terms of, and this is not conference-wise and not unilaterally. This is going to be per institution, which is something important. The institutions get to decide on their calculators. These calculation, I should say, in terms of how they're going to break it down from sports. So they can say of the $20.5 million, essentially a salary cap. They won't want you to use that word, but who cares? I am. And there it will increase 4%. That was all baked into this. So you'll hear next year when newspapers come up that you can add 4% to 20.5 and find out what they're going to do in 2021, because money is going to grow based on the television money that comes in. So they know that that's how they pay this stuff out. So there will be a calculation in it. But the breakdown of that $20.5 million, one school can say 70% goes to football. Another school can say 80% of that 20 million goes to football. And they can break it down. That's why you've seen a lot of folks talking about they're hiring GMs, and their sole job will be operating like a GM does for professional sports, to break down, to try to create a value structure to say, hey, this percentage will go to quarterbacks. Our starting quarterback may likely get this. Offensive lineman may likely get this. But it'll add up to that 80% or that 70% or 60%. Another 20%, if it's 60%, may go to basketball. 15% may go to women's basketball. And then in Olympic sports, for some organizations, I heard that they were going to split 5% amongst all Olympic sports. But you got to break it down. Some places, Olympic sports are really big, so they might get a little more. Other places, Olympic sports are not that good. You think about baseball in the SEC. I told some people, I did a calculation. People don't realize that baseball plays more games, so that's part of it. But if you look at the attendance for some institutions, the SEC, they actually get more attendance numbers higher than they get for basketball. So obviously, we're talking about SEC. That's not Kentucky, but they might be true for LSU. They may say that our baseball value is bringing in more revenue dollars, so we're going to share a little bit more of that with baseball than we do with basketball. So again, think about it in terms of historically what institutions sports are doing well, and they may break it up a little different because those sports may be generating more money. So up in the North, you have some hockey teams that do really well in terms of their fan attraction. There may be a little slightly different for that Olympic breakdown than what you have. But all we're talking about is general across the board. That's where we're going to have to go. So you're going to have to get into specific and look at your specific institution or the institution of interest to see what is their breakdown that ultimately add up to $20.5 million this year, going up annually by 4%.
Right. And that number that you mentioned is that salary cap based on, as I'm reading here, based on the Power 4 number. So it's based off the highest.
It's all division. Good point. It's all Division I schools. The Power 4, or what I like to call the Super 2 and the Power 2, have pretty much already said that they're going to pretty much be all in at that 20.5 number.
Right, but I'm saying they set the average. They set the average, correct?
No, that's the number.
That's the max.
The number is based on them. The max number is based on what they earn, correct? That's what I'm reading.
It's based on the number that came out of the agreement of what was the money associated that could come out. It's not an average of what they could pay. It's money associated with what the deal was. Gotcha. And there's a 4% increase because essentially where this money is coming from TV revenue that's coming out of the NCAA directly to them. So they calculated a formula based on that. So any school, Prairie View, if they had $20 million, a big boost came in, dropped it on them, they could operate and say that we're going to give $20.5 million annually. They could do it if they opted in. Now, even if you opt in, notice the key word says up to.
Up to, right.
So they could do $5 million if they have it. They can do just $1 million.
Schools are not required to share revenue.
They opt in, they opt in, and then they decide what their personal salary cap is for the institution.
Yes.
Right. Can I bring up one more thing about this revenue share? And I'm reading this out of what Ross said. Title IX is not exempt, and that could result in other lawsuits.
That is correct, but you forgot who's in office right now and how he's still in Title IX. So y'all can live in this fantasy world if you want to and think y'all coming up with some silver bullets and nuggets, but he's already started putting issues with Title IX, just like Biden, when he left office, he talked about the ruling that they were not exempt. It wasn't a week that he was in office that he pulled that wording and said that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
So the ruling that you're referencing was pushed by Biden, and the current president has pulled that back. You got to stay on top of this. These folks move.
I'm telling you, they move quick, boy. They move quick.
Next question I have, and I need you to explain this to everybody, Dr. Cavil, about the Alston payments. And it says $2.5 billion of Alston payments count towards the cap, which is why many schools plan to curtail Alston payments. So can you break down what Alston payments are?
Yeah, when we look at the Alston payments, that was from another legal case in regards to
because correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Alston payments the money that they receive for the bonus that they receive for their grades and everything else? Is it something related to that?
About a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, about a year ago, there was a case where NCAA went to the Supreme Court and upheld the NCAA ruling on limited educational related compensation. If you remember that. Out of that case, there was a settlement that the NCAA said they would cut away and give money to schools that had a certain level of academic students that were reaching that. APR, graduation, and all these kind of things. So you get funding for that. Essentially what they did is they funneled this into this settlement. So you won't have both. You can have a percentage breakdown. So for the SWAC institutions that are not likely going to reach the $20 million, they still will have access to that funding. Or any Division I schools that do not hit it. So it's essentially the Super 2, Power 2, what they call the NCAA calls the Autonomous 4. They will not have access to that.
All right, go ahead, Bryan.
Yeah, no, you got to the Alston. Okay. So I think that let me see. Moving forward to the third part, which was the roster rules and enforcement arm. So the roster structure. So schools are permitted to scholarship full rosters under new limits. The roster limits change dramatically in football, where the roster is now 105 from 85, and that is a hard cap at 105. So that is like not to say you can have 104 and then have some walk-ons. No, it is 105 hard cap. That, and I got that direct, so that is a hard line number.
It is, but remember, while you can't have the walk-ons, you do have the ability now, based on agreement here, if you want to, that if there was somebody that was going to lose scholarship that you want to hold on to, you can have that. But that's usually going to be in the Olympic sport. You wouldn't have to worry about it in the football sports. And so there is that little loophole. So we need to think about that, because prior to the settlement, that's what the NCAA and its member institutions were asking for. They wanted a hard cap. But part of this agreement was to soften that a little bit to protect those that may have lost it in the Olympic sports.
Okay, so the roster limits, I mentioned the football. Men's basketball is now 15 from 13, and baseball is 34 from 11.7.
That's the one I'm interested in, because you always talk about how close we are in baseball. And that's why last week I was giving y'all a hard time, because I was like, man, they finna change the game like they always do. Every time you get a little close, don't fool yourself. They're going to change it to benefit them to keep the distance. The other one that's interesting for us is FCS is 110 players.
What?
110 roster limits for FCS level football.
Oh, okay. 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 I didn't see that part here, but they do say walk-ons do still exist. Most schools will not scholarship full rosters. And I think I don't know.
Right.
I read somewhere that conferences were coming to an agreement.
To your point, that's a play on the thing, which means a walk-on just would be below the roster limit.
Right.
So they're not the definition of a walk-on, because what we thought about walk-ons were 85 scholarship limits. They would walk on and they wouldn't cost you a scholarship. Now, if you are doing funding at 90, right? Let's say you funding at 90, you still have 15 slots for roster slots. Those 15 could be walk-on, but they're still under the 105.
Right. And Bryan, we weren't funding most of our sports anyway at these levels, which is going to mean this is going to really be interesting at what we do, because really outside of football and possibly basketball, everything else we were not funding at the levels that we were allowed to before this settlement.
Biggest sport would be baseball. It was 11.7.
And you had a lot of people that like 5 and 7.
4 or 5. Yep, exactly.
Let's see. Let me pick up here where I was. Okay. Most schools. Okay. The enforcement arm. So the enforcement arm, there is a cap management system, which, let's see, plaintiffs /P4/NCAA to police cap requiring regular school submissions. There would also be a clearinghouse, what they call a Deloitte-run entity to approve non-school NIL deals with athletes. And I believe like any deal over $600, I think, has to go through a process of being approved. And then there's an arbitration with a neutral arbiter to hear appeals. And if I'm not mistaken, they hired or they appointed somebody like late Friday night, or even came out Saturday morning.
Right after it came out. So they already had the deal done. They just weren't going to.
Yeah, there was already somebody in place, and they already have an entity structure.
They had an agreement with somebody, and once the deal came in, they'd be like, "All right, let's go."
Okay.
Somebody from MLB, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so
I can't remember his name, but I believe he was from MLB.
Yeah. All right. So, and then I think there's another mention here of opting in and out. So schools have a choice to opt in of the settlement terms, thus prohibiting them from revenue sharing.
Let's opt out.
Excuse me. Have a choice to opt out of settlement terms, prohibiting them from revenue sharing. Many FCS and basketball playing leagues will have a mix of opt-outs / opt-ins. And there is ongoing debate on competition between P4 schools and those that opt out.
Yeah, those things will come. And that's why I think you'll hear like some teams that opt out now. Next year, if guidelines change, they might opt in next year because it'll affect the opportunities. But right now, based on what they see, they're not doing that. But Brian Seeley, Seeley, a former Major League Baseball executive, has been named the CEO of the College Sports Commission. I want to make sure that we clear this up. The NIL deal is a different framework than the College Sports Commission, what people probably will refer to now the CSC, which is a new organization. The College Sports Commission has been formed by the Power 4 conferences to oversee the implementation of the settlement and enforce the revenue sharing rules. So that guideline is for the revenue sharing rule guidelines. Are you in the rules? And this guy, though, is going to be about the enforcement side. For those that break the rules, you're going to have to go to this guy and explain that you didn't break the rules or why he shouldn't bust your head. But anyway, that's what he's going to do. So it used to be that you would have the NCAA infraction committee. That's basically the CSC is taking the place of that arm of the NCAA, what the was going to do. You heard some nerves that the NCAA is kind of pulling out. The other one is you talking about separate, which is the NIL deals, which athletes can continue to pursue external NIL deals, but those exceeding $600 must be disclosed for revenue in new NIL gold clearinghouses. This is going to be interesting for me for HBCUs, where I think the NIL deals will be lower compressed anyway. So if you give NIL deals for small business under $600, all you have to do is report it to the institution. You don't have to worry about going to this NIL clearinghouse, which is going to be governed by Deloitte.
You're going to have a lot of $5.99 deals.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So Deloitte, a large corporation that you don't know, a firm, they'll be over that part of the business. So you're still going to have, as you see, large corporations and large executives that have found their way to get their hands on some money to manage this process.
You know what it looks like to me?
It will be very likely that you won't see a lot of faces like us getting those positions, but that's a whole nother discussion.
You know what it looks like to me? While this CSC may be doing the rules enforcement, looks like NCAA has been relegated to all they're doing is the rules of the game. How are we changing the rules on the field now, while this other institution is dealing with the enforcement infractions and everything. I just hope
they will be a glorified AAU tournament. Their whole business structure is going to be geared around doing tournaments.
Yeah, I just hope this speeds up the enforcement process, because right now under NCAA, you have whole classes that have graduated since an infraction occurred, and by the time they get done investigating and giving the punishment out, you know, you a whole class removed from the person who even committed the infraction. So I really hope that this is a method to speed up that process.
I think without a doubt that is part of what this process is about, is speeding up the process and cutting down on the number of rules. That it's going to be basic set guidelines. You do this, then you did it. If you didn't, you're fine. But essentially, you've seen the NCAA trying to move towards this. You remember the ruling from Michigan. It came a lot sooner than what was in the past. You've seen a couple of other institutions that have gotten rulings. So they've slowly and surely tried to move past it. But the Power 4, Autonomous 4, or what I call the Power 2 in the Super 2, they have pushed to remove them outside of that, the rule governance structure.
And the significance
of what they're doing, for little by little, they're taking more power away from the NCAA, consolidating it so essentially they have their own power, their own guidelines and rules. So again, it's about them being able to control the percentages. So if we have a pie, 100% of the pie, if I can get paid 90% of that pie and let whoever else eat and split the 10%, but I can make the entire block of us pay 60% of the expenses, look how that affects my books. I've taken in more revenue, but now I've split the expenses, which means my profits rose. That's simply what they're doing.
I was going to say one thing about the $600 rule. And in case people out there don't know it, the $600 threshold is the IRS threshold for having to report your taxes as an independent contractor.
Yes.
So they made that rule in
kind of interesting how that number worked out
with what the IRS already has you doing. So $600 or more, you got to pay taxes on it anyway. So while you paying the IRS, you got to make sure you report it to this. I'm gonna say that again. When you report it to this group, make sure you pay the IRS and report it on your taxes at the end of the year. I cannot say it any
Well,
better.
hopefully,
there will be a lot of student athletes who I pray to God I'm wrong about this, but there's going to be a lot of people who get caught up with tax implications.
I've already been wondering where what's been happening over the last year or 2 years with the taxes and stuff. But anyway, you know, that's a. But I would hope that this new clearinghouse helps students out with that. Hopefully.
I don't know about that, but a lot of the institutions, to their credit, have been doing a lot of that work, because you got to remember, to get an NIL, you had to report that to the institution anyway.
Right.
So one of the guidelines that a lot of institutions were doing once they got their reports, that they were doing a lot of workshops with student college athletes, as I like to say, in regards to how to make sure they stay within business regulations. And obviously, the bigger the deals, the more important, because all they did was share it with their colleagues and friends that were in the business. And now those folks took care of them, but they also got paid. So it was a way to keep the business within itself. It's the same thing with agents. Remember when these big time players and a lot of the black agents were having a problem because they couldn't get their hands on the college athletes, and that was because coaches were feeding athletes to their agents that they took care of. And it was a way for them to control the framework of the business. Same thing here. They are taken care of in terms of the business part of this. Now, you have some folks that are outside of that loop that do not have that opportunity, and they might have a little problem with the taxes. But they were doing a lot of the tax controls and educating a lot of students. Even at the quote unquote smaller branded institutions, they were doing it as well.
Let me go and mention, and I'm looking at this article here from HBCU Sports.com, and I don't know whether you guys have seen anything from one of the other outlets.
Oh, I love what Jamie said. We got to catch that. Let's catch that. He put it out there. While everybody worry about this taxation part of it, if you're gonna tax folks, that means you call them employees. If you call them employees, now you got a collective bargaining. That's what they want to stay away from. Not so much about whether they call them employees. They could care less. They're paying them now. What they don't want to do is allow the college athletes to organize and create a collective.
But that's why you're doing a 1099, is it not?
Bargaining. Yeah, they don't want to do the union, because now you got
you don't want that. You don't want that.
That's what's going on.
But,
good job, Jamie.
But that's why they're giving them a 1099. I mean, that's why they would give them a 1099. Would it, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they want to stay away from the
so
union.
Make your money, but you're an independent contractor, so to speak, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, outside for the fact that you're kicking the ball, shooting the ball, or running the ball, it almost sounds like you are on an employment contract. For maybe not a full employee, but I'm pretty sure I've worked under employment contracts. I know Dr. Cavil has probably worked under an employment contract before. You know, the way this is shaping up, it looks like an employment contract to me. Not a full-time employee, not a 1099, but because you required to go to the office, which is the field or the court, it almost looks like an employment contract.
Right, which is challenged, because this is where you get into legal terminology, which is above all of our pay grade. And I in past, look, I was gonna mess up. I was about to say I slept, but never mind. I ain't gonna do that, because people be telling on you. And this was way back in the past, so I ain't gonna say all that. But when you talk about it, like for Texas Southern University, as a faculty member or a staff member, we don't sign contracts, right? And private institutions are a little bit different, Drew. That's why you can say what you're saying in that terminology, because at private schools, they tend to have more contracts because of the business way it happens. It's easier for them to deal with it. But at public institutions, particularly state institutions in the South that do not allow unionization, at Texas Southern University, over the previous years, there were basically 4 and 5 people with contracts. That's the president, the athletic director, VP of athletics, the football coach, men's and women's basketball coach, and most recently the baseball coach. Those are the only folks on the campus that had contracts. What we had were terms that we would sign for. So we would sign and say, hey, your teaching load is this, or your staff load is this, and that is your agreement. They were very careful to make sure that they would word things for us that we were not signing contracts, because it creates a whole legal different framework when people say contracts.
Employment
versus
agreement.
you just where you have an employment agreement in terms of that has terms. So in a lot of ways, it seems like a contract, but from a legal perspective, it is important that those designations are put in place. So we're getting really in the weeds and technical, but I thought it was important to share a little more context of what that looks like.
Can we mention, and where I was going to go for a minute before we got to Jamie's question, was cataloging schools that have opted in or opted out. I know as I'm reading this article here from HBCU Sports, they list schools here. Now, they say multiple HBCUs, but then they specifically point out Morgan State, which I believe Morgan State has even they've been very vocal in including a marketing plan about how they're expected to contribute over $230,000 to the settlement, and then how they are going to be a part of this. There's also Maryland Eastern Shore mentioned, North Carolina A&T, and Hampton through an association with the CAA. I'm also familiar with conversations at Florida A&M through, conversations that we've had on our Wednesday show with A.D. Angela Suggs, that Florida A&M is opting in. And if I'm not mistaken, Doc, the SWAC as a whole, I believe if every member of the SWAC is opting in. Is that correct? So, I mean, that's kind of coming from a conference level. Or am I wrong?
Conference, I want to be careful with this. The conference is suggesting, and as a conference, they're opting in. The member institutions still have to opt in individually.
On their own, yes.
On their own. And the idea is that that each member of the institutions will opt in, but they still will have to make an institution. So I don't want to say it's collective. I can say as a collective conference, we know that the Ivy League released a statement that they were opting out.
Okay.
It is also important that they push the deadline to June 15th. So we'll probably hear a lot of chatter over the last week now that this has come down on who's actually opting in and opting out. A lot of them were kind of waiting to see was this push so they wouldn't have to worry about any branding on whether they were going to opt in or out. So now it's done. You'll see a little more of that. You also hear the schools such as North Dakota, Siena, have signaled that they plan to opt out, while other schools, including the Horizon League, intend to opt in. Some, like VCU, intend to opt in, but spend less than the $20.5 million potentially revenue. So those are the names.
They already have a plan
among the ones that you just added that have verbally said some kind of way of what they're going to do. And most of those schools are going to operate below the $20.5 million. To you.
I got to ask the world's dumbest question before we end this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
How can you sell me on opting in and revenue share and everything else that we will be required to do by opting in, and we can't even give cost of attendance to our students right now? You don't have to answer that. I just want to put that out.
I think that's a serious and a good question in terms of the cost of attendance. But I think what this does is what's going to be different from when we didn't provide the cost of attendance. Now you have the opportunity, and you'll see a lot more schools doing cost of attendance. First of all, what this does more than anything, it allows you to use some of the revenue that you were coming into your institution to balance the budget. Because as most public institutions, they were reporting zero, right? So basically what you made is what you spent. So now you might see a little differently about that money you made. You're still spending it, but it's still spending all of it back just towards the organization in terms of scholarships. Now you might spend a little bit more for, you've seen Jackson State talk about that they're going to do $2, $3, $5 on a ticket sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's obviously going to increase revenues, but now $2, $5 coming out of the ticket will go there. You'll also see some schools now that do game guarantees. Instead of all of that game guarantee going back into the budget to just expense out based on what the school had loaned the school, now they'll pay back towards that loan early on, but they'll use part of that payout. Let's just make it simple. You get a $500K payout. $100,000 of that may go towards NIL.
And we saw what Coach Ward's contract looked like at FAMU. He had a smaller game guarantee that he was required to bring in, so that it and a certain portion of it, once he got to whatever the number was, I want to say it was 2 something, it went towards NIL. If I remember correctly, part of it went towards NIL, part of it went towards coaches' salaries,
bonuses, and stuff like that.
He had all this stuff. If you brought in more than like 250 or whatever the number was, he had
that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example where oftentimes he'll still bring in that type of money, but the amount of money that has to go back into the institution has been low. So at one time he had to bring in, let's say, $300K, right? With the new contract, they say you have to bring in $250, and basically what they're saying is you have to bring in $250 that goes back towards the budget. So if you do more than that, that can go other areas. Last year, Jackson State set up a contract with their men's basketball coach like that, where he was required to get like $700,000 from basketball money. He ended up bringing in like $1 million or $900K. That $200,000, $300K went back to the budget, where he was able to do things such as NIL, update some things in the locker room, whatever. So it still means that you can bring in that kind of money, but now you're going to be a little more different than how you spent that money, instead of it all going back to the budget. So to kind of sum it up, you're going to see a lot of institutions be more creative in terms of, one, the type of money they bring in, and then certainly how they expense that money. That's essentially the bottom line. But to close it out, I want to say the 6 areas that we talked about in this was the payment to players of $2.8 million, revenue sharing of $20.5 million, 22% cap average over the power conferences with an annual 4% increase. We talked about NIL deals and Deloitte with the NIL Gold Clearinghouse. We talked about College Sports Commission, the CSC, and the executive director that is over that now. And we talked about roster limits in terms, and we even gave you some indication of what those roster limits were. So to sum up this conversation, since we talked about a lot, we added the historical component of where it came from and how HBCUs have always been on the front end of it, pushing for fairness, equity. I know DEI is a dirty word now, but that's what they were doing. But with that being said, I just wanted to provide a summation of what we covered to help educate the masses. And I want to just say thank you for giving me this platform, as you said, to go a little deeper into detail over a longer period of time. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cavil. And on Tuesday, I would love for you to kind of at least take part of your show, if you could, and get into how this is going to affect our HBCUs, because we did not get into that specific discussion today on what the ramifications will be for our HBCUs. We just talked about this in a totality today. So
well, but isn't a lot of that going to be based on what we find out from schools? I mean, once we get a real picture of who's opting in and who is not, that's where I think you can start to analyze what it will do. But I know we've seen many schools, like you've already mentioned, several schools already coming up with creative ways in anticipation. Like if they're going to opt in, they're already the conversations have already begun
That's true.
I know even at Florida A&M, the conversations, the pleas to alums and administrators has already started to say, we have to do more. We have to creatively come up with the revenue and money. And other schools like Jackson State are creating. So the creativity aspect of where this money is going to come from has already begun.
Yep.
Now we're just waiting on the official statements to come out over the next, 10 days or less? We're waiting on the official statements to come out saying where we stand on this.
Yeah. And what will be the budget impact? Will we see sports cut at institutions? Yes. You know, those are some of the things that we want to see, because you got to have 14?
We will see that. We will see
at the Division I level. You have to have 14.
You got to have 14. Yeah. And for me, I'll be honest. How does this affect me at the Division II level? Although we're not part of the House settlement and everything else, there's going to be some trickle down to us at the Division II level, and I would love to find out. And I know you won't be able to answer that Tuesday, but I do know the NACDA convention is going on, and I know I wish I could be a fly on the wall to some of those conversations that are going on at the NACDA convention this week right now in Orlando, Florida.
Absolutely.
Might need to find my way over there. Might need to find out what hotel they're at, and then kind of bump around in the lobby.
We're gonna put you on that mission, bro.
We're gonna put you on tomorrow, Brian.
Yeah, you tell me what hotel they're at, and I may bump around in the afternoon.
Yeah, that way you can sit at the bar. I got the first drink. Make sure you get over there.
There you go. I love it. All right. Appreciate your time tonight, Doc. And all your insight and sharing. Do you want to pub those books again that you had? I want to put you on the full screen, or as much of the full screen as I can get here, and give you a chance to publicize those books that you referenced in the first segment.
Yeah, I certainly will. It's good for these authors. Some of them are friends of mine, but certainly for the readers, I'll put this up here. Here's the first one I went over was Walter Byers with Charles Hammer, Unsportsmanlike Conduct. I'll put that up there for you. It talks about exploiting college athletes. We got Indentured. That is the inside story of rebellion against the NCAA. Joe Nasaria, New York Times bestseller with Ben Strauss. This is another one, Cross the Line. It talks about profiles in basketball courage, tales of the first Black players in the ACC by Barry Jacobs. Here's one that goes back where we talk about the history. The grandfather of basketball, the life and times of Dr. E.B. Henderson. Anybody that's in physical education or in sports should know about E.B. Henderson. Is written by his son, E.B. Henderson II. So any of my professors out there, if you get a chance, let him know, and I'll connect you with him, because he'd love to come in and do some presentations for you. Thursday Night Lights. This is right here out of Texas. Good friend of mine, Michael Hurd, the story of Black high school football in Texas. You have Breaking Through. This one is by Milton S. Katz, John McClendon, basketball legend, civil rights pioneer. You have The Secret Game. This is the wartime story of courage, change in basketball, loss, triumph by Scott Ellsworth. Another one that you need to make sure you understand for those are Benching Jim Crow, the rise and fall of the color line of Southern college sports, 1890 to 1980. This is by Charles H. Martin. A lot of folks that want to talk about HBCUs, particularly in regards to when the athletes started to leave, that's a good book for you. Those that are into our particular sports, Breaking the Line. This one is The Season in Black College Football That Transformed the Sport and Changed the Course of Civil Rights by Samuel G. Friedman. This has a lot of information about HBCUs, but specifically looks at Grambling State as well as FAMU. Talking about FAMU, this is one that I really love. It's written by a Black author and faculty member, Derek White, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Jake Gaither, Florida A&M in the History of Black College Football. I have one more, which is another Black author, Jelani favors the HBCU graduate shelter in the time of storm, how Black college foster generation of leadership and activism. I think this is a book that's important now with what we're seeing taking place to make sure we understand, because he talks about the hidden curriculum and how you still educated, because these folks in the 50s and 60s were the individuals that broke the back of Jim Crow laws, and obviously they didn't have what we have today. So if they were able to do it, then we certainly can live past what we're living through in this day and age, even if it's in a sporting context. So thank you for allowing me to share some books in terms of where I come from and why I spin and write in the direction I have for HBCUs in terms of the HBCU sports culture, as I like to call that, sporting HBCU dash.
A little summer reading list for everybody out there.
Little?
So,
Brian, I think your books was. That's not a little list.
Take it to the beach with you and spend a good 8 hours.
Hey, Dr. Cavil, just so you know, E.B. Henderson's grandson used to work for me once upon a time.
Wow, we got to get a hold of him. I gotta see if we can catch up with him. I need to talk to him.
Yes, one of his grandsons. Yes.
Yeah, when I transitioned out of engineering, decided to look at sports, I started on the kinesiology side, where I really was blessed with the opportunity, thanks to Texas Southern. Dr. Cummings gave me the opportunity, along with Dr. Cunningham, who was serving as the dean in the interim. The dean and associate dean at the time, played basketball in the CIAA for West Virginia, for Central State as well as Virginia State. So a lot of history, and they allowed me to do the sport management program. But before I did that, I did kinesiology, and all the books were talked about everybody else, and I was always curious in terms of faces that looked like us. And then I came across the literature about E.B. Henderson and what he did in terms of establishing basketball. So all you basketball fans, and this is the perfect way to close up, because Brian wants to go see some basketball, right? In terms of literally the father of basketball, black basketball, as he likes to call, is the grandfather of black basketball. It looks at the Black Five, if you would, is right here. It's Dr. E.B. Henderson, who did a lot of information and educating folks the importance of being healthy in our community. And you got to think about this in the context when he's doing this in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, was when you had the Great Migration, but a lot of us were in these small tenant office where it was very unsafe in terms of how close people were in proximity. And you were still trying to deal with how do you create systems that clean, manure systems and all that. So one of the things he talked about, the need to be healthy, which he, along with a lot of folks, started basketball. And that's where you get the Black Five, which even has a connection to the first basketball team at Howard University and Lincoln University in Pennsylvania.
And FYI, E.B. Henderson went into the Naismith Hall of Fame about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I saw it. I was very excited about that. Very excited about it. Well overdue. Along with John D. Clendon in terms of his history and what he brought together. Those are some pioneers in terms of doing it on multiple levels, along with a lot of HBCU coaches, presidents, and administrators.
Make sure, guys, check out Doc's show Tuesday and Thursday nights right here on the Black College Sports Network, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central. And then, of course, Wednesday, you've got the Indy Report at 7 Eastern, the ONG Strike Zone at 8. And then all of our shows you can find on the BCSN Pod Zone. Everywhere that you listen to podcasts, that's Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google Podcasts, all of those entities. Do us a favor. The numbers have been great over the last couple of weeks, months. So that means you guys are getting the message. So please go ahead and download, subscribe, rate, review. Even if you listen for whatever amount of time, it's all helpful. Rate and review. It's all appreciated. That's BCSN Pod Zone. All right.
So,
Drew, any final words?
I was going to say, this is one of those podcasts that you want to share with a friend, because we kind of went into it A lot of people have questions about this House settlement. If you don't share any of our other podcasts, this is the one that you want to share for the educational component of it.
Thank you.
Well said. It'll be good. It'll be good to see this upcoming week how this kind of news is reported. So again, be looking out this week for more information from your universities, especially the Division I institutions, as every athletic department will hopefully be releasing a statement regarding what their plan of action is. I know they've been planning it and they've been thinking about it. And so that you mentioned that June 15th date is upcoming. Everybody's got to kind of make a statement. So we'll see what we get out of it. So, all right, perfect timing. We're in the middle of a commercial break. My Pacers aren't doing too bad in the first stanza of the first quarter. So that'll give us a perfect time to go ahead and take that break and close the show out. So again, appreciate Doc for coming in. Drew, as always, good stuff tonight. And you guys in the chats, great questions, great interactions. Appreciate all of you. And go ahead and leave a comment if you're watching the show, via Facebook and YouTube. Leave your comments. It could be a question that Doc can get to on Tuesday, so we'll make sure to send any questions that you have to Doc. And of course, you can always hit him up right there on Twitter at DRKENYATTACAVIL on Twitter. All right. Appreciate you guys. You guys have a great week. Stay positive. Stay cool. If you're outside in the heat, wherever you are, if it's hot, stay cool, stay hydrated, and be safe. Until next week, for Doc, Drew, I'm Brian. Peace out, everybody.
Travel light, everybody. Holla.
Thank you.